Kim Wexler is one of the most psychologically complex characters on television, and I don't think people fully appreciate just how tragic her story actually is. Because on the surface, Kim looks like she has it together. She's brilliant, disciplined, competent, the kind of lawyer who works harder than anyone else in the room, the moral center of Better Call Saul. But underneath that perfect exterior, she's collapsing, slowly, methodically, and completely. Today, we're breaking down the psychology of Kim Wexler, how childhood neglect created hyper-independence, how perfectionism became her prison, how her relationship with Jimmy Mcgill became a shared delusion that destroyed them both, and how moral injury finally shattered the person she'd spent her entire life trying to be. This is the architecture of control, and how it became the architecture of her downfall. Let's go. Childhood neglect and hyper-independence. So let's start at the beginning. Kim's childhood. We don't get a ton of detail about her early life, but what we do see tells us everything we need to know. Her mother was unreliable, irresponsible. There was no structure, no stability, just chaos and disappointment. And when you grow up like that, when you can't depend on the adults in your life to take care of you, you learn to take care of yourself. You become hyper-independent. Hyper-independence isn't just self-sufficiency, it's the belief that relying on other people equals vulnerability, that asking for help is weakness, that the only person you can truly trust is yourself. Kim internalizes this completely. If I handle everything myself, I can't be hurt. That becomes her operating system. And you can see this throughout the entire show. She doesn't ask for help. She doesn't share her burdens. She just works harder, pushes through, handles it herself, because that's what she learned to do as a kid. And it's the only way she knows how to survive. But here's the thing about hyper-independence. It works until it doesn't. Until you're so isolated, so cut off from genuine connection, that you start making catastrophic decisions because you don't have anyone to reality check you. That's Kim's foundation, a childhood that taught her that control equals safety and vulnerability equals danger. Perfectionism as anxiety management. Now let's talk about perfectionism, because Kim's discipline, her long hours, her immaculate work, that's not just ambition, that's a coping mechanism. Perfectionism gives her the illusion of control. If she works hard enough, if she's good enough, if she never makes mistakes, then she's safe, then she has value, then she can't be hurt or discarded. This is what psychologists call adaptive perfectionism turned maladaptive. It starts as a survival strategy, but becomes a prison. And you can see the cost throughout the show. Kim works herself to exhaustion. She has no real friends outside of work, no hobbies, no life beyond her career and her relationship with Jimmy, because perfectionism demands everything. There's no room for anything that doesn't serve the goal of being flawless. But Kim mistakes excellence for self-worth. She believes that if she's perfect enough, she'll finally be enough. That if she just works a little harder, achieves a little more, then maybe she can outrun that feeling of inadequacy from childhood. It doesn't work. It never works. Because perfectionism is never actually about being perfect. It's about managing anxiety. And the anxiety is always there, no matter how much you achieve. Compartmentalization and emotional suppression. Alright, so here's where things get really interesting psychologically. Kim survives through compartmentalization. She splits her inner world into different parts. There's the good lawyer, Kim, who does pro bono work and fights for justice. And there's the rule breaker, Kim, who schemes with Jimmy and gets a thrill from bending or breaking the law. This is a psychological defense mechanism. By keeping these parts separate, she doesn't have to confront the contradiction. She can be both, as long as she never fully acknowledges that they're the same person. And this allows her to do some genuinely wild things. She can spend her days being an ethical lawyer helping vulnerable clients, and then spend her evenings planning elaborate cons with Jimmy. And in her mind, those are two different versions of herself, so there's no conflict. But suppressed emotions always come back. You can't compartmentalize forever. Eventually the walls break down, and for Kim, that happens when Howard dies. Suddenly she can't separate the good Kim from the scheming Kim anymore, because her scheming directly led to an innocent man's death. The compartments collapse, and so does her entire sense of identity, codependency and shared delusion with Jimmy. Now we need to talk about Jimmy, because Kim's relationship with him is absolutely central to understanding her psychology. And here's what people get wrong. Jimmy doesn't corrupt Kim. He doesn't drag her down into his world of cons and schemes. Kim chooses it. She wants it. Because with Jimmy, she gets to be a version of herself that her perfectionist persona won't allow. This is textbook codependency. She derives meaning and purpose through their shared dysfunction. He feeds her rebellious side, gives her permission to break the rules, and she gives him moral legitimacy, makes him feel like he's not just a con man. They validate each other's worst impulses while telling themselves that they're in love. But here's the deeper psychological truth. Kim isn't addicted to Jimmy, she's addicted to the version of herself she can be with him. The spontaneous, rule-breaking, exciting version that doesn't have to be perfect all the time. That's why she keeps going back, even when she knows it's destructive. Because without Jimmy, she has to be perfect Kim 24/7. And that's exhausting, that's suffocating. With Jimmy, she gets to breathe, even if that breath is toxic. This is a shared delusion. They're both pretending that what they're doing is harmless fun, victimless cons, sticking it to people who deserve it. And as long as they both believe the delusion, it works. Until Howard's death forces them to see reality, and the delusion shatters. Moral dissonance and self-justification. Let's talk about the internal conflict that's been building in Kim the entire time. Moral dissonance. Kim genuinely believes in justice. She does pro bono work because she cares about helping people. She has strong ethical principles about right and wrong, but she's also planning elaborate schemes to destroy Howard Hamlin's reputation for, what? Revenge? Thrill-seeking? Because it feels good to win. These two sides of her are in constant conflict, and the way she manages that conflict is through self-justification. She creates narratives that make her behavior okay. Howard deserves this. He's smug and privileged. We're just teaching him a lesson. It's not really that bad. We're the good guys. This is cognitive dissonance. When your actions don't match your values, you either change your actions or change how you think about your actions. And Kim chooses the second option. She rationalizes, she justifies, she tells herself stories that make her feel like she's still the good guy, even while she's doing increasingly questionable things. But here's the problem with moral dissonance. It builds pressure, like a psychological dam holding back a flood. And eventually, something has to give. For Kim, that dam breaks the moment Lalo walks into their apartment and shoots Howard in the head. Suddenly, all those justifications, all those narratives about it being harmless, they'll be exposed as lies. Howard didn't deserve any of it, and now he's dead. And Kim can't pretend anymore that what they were doing was okay. Moral injury? After Howard's death, Kim experiences something psychologists call moral injury. Moral injury is the deep psychological harm that comes from betraying your own core values. It's different from regular guilt. This is about shattering your fundamental sense of who you are as a moral being. Kim built her entire identity around being a good person, a lawyer who helps people, someone who fights for justice, and now she has to live with the fact that her actions directly contributed to an innocent man's death. That destroys her, and her response is extreme self-punishment. She quits law, the one thing she's devoted her entire life to. She leaves Jimmy, the person she loves most. She moves to Florida and creates the most boring, colorless, emotionless existence possible. This is atonement through deprivation. She's punishing herself by removing everything that gave her life meaning, by living a life so numb and hollow that it matches the moral numbness she feels inside. She doesn't believe she deserves joy, or success, or love, or anything good, because good people don't get people killed. So she constructs a life that reflects what she believes she deserves: nothing. Emotional numbing and identity erasure. Let's talk about Florida Kim, because this is one of the most devastating character transformations I've ever seen. When we see her in Florida, she's completely flat. Grey clothes, monotone voice, no expression, no emotion. She's going through the motions of existence without actually living. This is post-traumatic emotional numbing, when you experience something so psychologically devastating that your brain just shuts down emotions as a protective measure. But Kim's not just numb, she's erased herself. Everything that made her Kim Wexler is gone. The ambition, the intelligence, the passion, the fire. She's killed all of it and replaced it with this hollow suburban existence. This is chronic dissociation, when emotional shutdown stops being a temporary coping mechanism and becomes your permanent way of being. And the tragedy is that Kim thinks this is what she deserves. She's not just surviving, she's punishing herself by becoming nothing, by living a life so deliberately meaningless that it's almost like she's dead anyway. That's how severe her moral injury is. She's not trying to heal or move forward, she's trying to disappear without actually dying. Confession and moral repair. But then, something shifts. Kim makes a choice. She confesses. She writes an affidavit detailing everything she and Jimmy did. She exposes herself to legal liability, to judgment, to consequences. And she does it knowing it won't undo anything. Howard is still dead. She's still guilty. So why does she do it? Because confession isn't about redemption, it's about integration. For years, Kim has been splitting herself into parts, compartmentalizing. suppressing, hiding, and that fragmentation is what's been killing her. By confessing, by owning her guilt publicly and completely, she's finally reuniting all those fragmented pieces of herself. The lawyer, the lover, the criminal. She's acknowledging that they're all her, that she can't hide from what she's done anymore. This is what moral repair actually looks like. Not erasing the harm, not being forgiven, but reconnecting with your own conscience, becoming whole again, even if that wholeness includes terrible guilt. It's not salvation, it's authenticity. And for someone like Kim, who spent her entire life controlling her image and suppressing her truth, authenticity is the only path to anything resembling peace. Control as trauma. Here's the core psychological theme of Kim's entire story: control. Throughout her life, control equals safety. If she can control her work, control her emotions, control her circumstances, then she's safe. Then she can't be hurt like she was as a child. But that need for control becomes the source of her suffering, because the tighter she grips, the more fragile everything becomes. Her perfectionism isolates her. Her compartmentalization fractures her. Her relationship with Jimmy becomes a shared delusion because neither of them can admit they're out of control. And when things finally spiral beyond her control with Howard's death, she doesn't just lose control of the situation, she loses control of herself, her identity, her morality, her entire sense of who she is. The tragedy of Kim Wexler is that she mistakes control for strength, when real strength lies in vulnerability, in admitting you can't handle everything alone, in asking for help, in accepting that you're human and flawed and that's okay. But she never learned that, so she holds on tighter and tighter until everything shatters in her hands. So there it is. The psychology of Kim Wexler. She's not destroyed by Jimmy Mcgill. She's not corrupted by the criminal world. She's destroyed by her own need for control, her inability to be vulnerable, and her moral rigidity that couldn't bend without breaking. She's a woman shaped by childhood neglect who learned that perfection equals safety, who compartmentalized her way through moral contradictions until they collapsed, who found freedom in dysfunction until that dysfunction killed someone, and who punished herself so severely that she nearly erased herself completely. Kim Wexler's story is about what happens when you build your entire identity on discipline and control, and then that foundation cracks. It's about the trauma of being perfect in a world that punishes imperfection. And what makes it so tragic is that she was genuinely trying to be good. She wasn't evil or malicious, she just couldn't accept that being good doesn't mean being perfect, that making mistakes doesn't make you worthless, that vulnerability isn't weakness. By the time she learns those lessons, it's too late. The damage is done. Howard is dead, her relationship with Jimmy is over, her career is gone, and she's left picking up the pieces of a person she spent her whole life constructing. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you want more psychological breakdowns of TV characters,